For the time being, I'm going to pivot to our third panelist, Nathan Poirier, whose talk is titled In Vitro Meat as a Conflict of Interest Between Humans and Non-Human Animals. Nathan is a professional math tutor with a PhD in sociology. Nathan was the first to publish a sustained body of critique against in vitro meat and has been doing so for a decade. Nathan also publishes independently on topics that range over various forms of oppression and liberation efforts. Nathan, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. I'm going to share my screen or try. Yep. All right. Whoops. I want to start with the end there. Looking good?
It's good. It's not in like the presentation mode. It's
Yeah.
in, but it's up to you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, trying to get there. The share option, the share bar was in front of the menu items.
Ah, I see.
So there we go. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, so I will refer to this thing in vitro meat as IVM for short, and the title of this presentation is its thesis. So, a little bit of background. This presentation, the topic today, stems from a debate chapter that I have written with Josh Milburn, the author of the book in question, that will be forthcoming in a collected volume. Um, Through that debate chapter in the correspondence with Josh, I found out about this book. So it was not able to be integrated into that chapter, and so it is here. But through writing that chapter and through talking to Josh personally about the chapter and otherwise, um, I have found that I think Josh presents the most fundamental, the strongest challenge to my ideas on the topic of IVM. And so I thought singling out his book, paying attention to it, was particularly warranted because it does certainly challenge me, and I have learned things from him about this topic. Now, Josh's book, the one pictured here, Food Justice in Animals, goes well beyond IVM, but I focus on the IVM part of it, which I do think forms a core part of that book. And I do want to be clear, because this will be a spirited presentation, that this is a critique of Josh's ideas, not him personally. I have gotten to know him. I do like Josh. But this is a critique of his ideas, which are not just his. Things like this are generally shared. And I have not found anything pro IVM worth any merit. So this is continuing the streak of critiquing this problematic discourse. So, what is Josh's book generally about? So it is about how we can have respect for animals and access the positive things animal agriculture gives us, which Josh lists as good food, good jobs. What he elsewhere says is a good life and stuff beyond that. So it's the highlighted parts that I have real issue here. Josh sets this up as respecting animals, and I would say that just about nothing about this framework actually respects animals. Secondly, this notion of good food, good jobs, and a good life is heavily critiqued here. I think these are induced value judgments by Josh that are not at all sufficiently motivated. So, more specific with this book is he tries to outline what he calls a truly ideal cellular agriculture. And it consists of these sorts of things. So, he envisions animals as workers. So, they work to essentially reproduce themselves so that we can get their cells from them. Now, for Josh, certain animals have rights. The ones that would work for IVM have rights just by being animals, but because they are workers, he gives them additional rights on top of that. Um, Accordingly, because they are workers, he envisions them being paid a salary. What it actually means to give animals money, I have no idea. But animals are often given things such as enrichment opportunities in these scenarios that Josh envisions, and also their preferences are attended to. So if they prefer to be in certain patches of the farm, they're allowed to, and maybe those patches should be particularly well maintained or expanded and whatnot. Or if they want to be inside or outside certain times of the day, those animals are allowed to do that. Now, one of the fundamental things about Josh's vision, and he is very emphatic about this, is that animals are not to be killed. These animals are not to be killed for any of the resources or of the commodities or whatnot that they might provide for humans. That is a cornerstone. Since we are talking about IVM, there would be biopsies involved. So that's how the cells would be obtained to grow this meat. But Josh says these would be painless or nearly so, and that they should not be taken too frequently from any particular animal or too long over any animal's life. So, similar to that, as workers, these animals would be afforded a right to retirement, so they would not literally work to death. So, these sorts of points generally frame the vision here. And this sounds pretty good. This seems like the animals are really being taken into account. And this is very deceptive, but a lot of this can be pulled apart. So thinking about what Josh is calling the good life. So a lot of what he talks about is humans eating certain foods. And celebrating certain occasions, and in particular, having certain foods at certain occasions. So, like turkey at Thanksgiving in the United States, for example. But he makes allowances for cultures all over the world. But there's very little, I think, engagement with what it means to want to eat certain foods and what it means to celebrate certain occasions. Thanksgiving in the United States is a primary example as far as I'm concerned. Josh's real main, maybe only reason for promoting these things and saying that these foods we should be allowed to continue, these celebrations we should be allowed to continue, is simply because a lot of people like them. So a lot of people like celebrating Thanksgiving. A lot of people like eating turkey. So they should be allowed to do that. Now, there is some more nuance there. Josh is not saying kill animals to eat turkey. He's saying do it via IVM. We'll get into that. But the reason of just that a lot of people like to do it, I think falls real flat. Some other components of the good life consist of good work, which he operationalizes largely as working with small herds. So essentially a human right to farm animals if we want to. Also, humans' ideal image, thought of the countryside or relation to the countryside, rural landscapes. But also having access to these things, having access to animals, access to the countryside and whatnot. These are also aspects of the good life that are kind of lumped in with the preceding point above, the foods and occasions. That basically a lot of people like these things, so we should be basically entitled to continue them in one form or another. Now, one of the things he asserts is that there could be good work for animals for those who want it. Now, this would be part of the good life. Now, the those in question are humans. So, for humans who want to work with animals, we should be allowed to. I don't know where the animal perspective is in there. Similarly, this is kind of the famous line that's on like the dust jacket or the description of the book. We will have our cow, but if we want to, we will eat her too. So, again, the we here is humans. I don't know where the animals are in this. But the middle part there, the highlighted part, if we want to, this I think gives away Josh's whole argument. It shows his hand. Everything that he envisions is based around what humans want. And he will assert a lot of the animal's agency, concerns, and rights and whatnot. But ultimately, this is where it's at. If we want to, we will do these things. So, animal labor, animals as laborers. Josh does not say that animals must work, only that they could find value in it. Now, this I agree totally with, but I think it's an exceedingly weak claim. I would wonder how many animals would actually find value in working for humans, and in particular, find value in working for humans in order to donate cells to create meat. I'll come back to this in the conclusion. Um, but also, Josh envisions this system, this IVM, well, this IVM situation as a system. He's very clear about that. This is not about particular instances of particular people doing this in kind of one-off circumstances to satisfy particular needs. He talks about feeding the world, so feeding millions of people off of this. This is integrated into states. So I don't see how the animals that find value in working for humans are going to sustain such a system. Also, cultivated meat offers a chance for us to live with at least some animals as equals. Now, if animals are laborers, they are employees. Humans are the employers. In no system, in no employer-employee relationship is that equal by definition. Employers always occupy a position of power over employees. The general vision that Josh presents is human created. Ultimately, humans are making most of the decisions, and they certainly have most of the power. Now, also, as part of the laborers, they donate cells, which means they will be biopsied. So Josh says, if biopsies neither harm nor inconvenience animals, we can sincerely say that the animals have chosen the shape of their life and their work. Now, I include this because this conclusion of this sentence, I don't think follows at all from the premise. If biopsies are harmless or inconvenient, that has nothing to do with what the animals have chosen or not. So, just to kind of show you what's in this argument overall. And also with animal labors, he makes an analogy to human labors, or not human labor, but to humans who we use for certain things, where we get parts or products of human bodies, yet we do not, shoot, this is in a way. Yeah, we do not take this to mean that humans are merely resources. Again, I agree. This is, I think, very true in certain human situations. However, in the case of animals in IVM, I also think they're not merely resources in the vision presented in this book, but I think ultimately and fundamentally they are. The situation is totally constructed around the resources they provide. So while they may not only be viewed as resources, that is the fundamental node in this relation. Now, Josh also critiques very heavily old animal abolitionism, but I think it's important to remark that he does so with little to no engagement with those people. There are very few, and if any, I'm trying to remember, I can't remember, but very little quotes or references to anyone supposedly associated with animal abolitionism. But nonetheless, he says that abolitionism features few animals, that there is something about respecting animals' rights about by eliminating them. A future in which humans interact with animals only through fleeting encounters with wild animals hardly sounds like a future to strive for. I think there's so many problems with this statement. First of all, the few animals thing. If Josh envisions small scale farms, not industrial, spread out, where animals choose to work because they like it, there's also going to be exceedingly few animals in Josh's vision. Yet for him, that's a plus. But with abolitionism, which he disagrees with, that's a critique. I find that inconsistent. Also, the idea of respecting animals' rights by eliminating them, I don't think that's not my understanding of the animal abolitionist standpoint. In the middle there, there's this quote that abolitionists actively call for the end of all domesticated animals. I don't think that's true. What they call for is the end of domestication. They don't like the system of oppression. It's not the animals they want gone, it's the harm they want gone. And so this is a misrepresentation, I think, of the animal abolitionist standpoint. And then also saying that when human encounters are only fleeting with wild animals, that this is bad, um, I think is way off the mark. First of all, I think this is how most human interactions with non-human animals are. And I think that's how it has been largely throughout most of human history. Certainly, this was how it was in general before domestication and before systematic domestication. And secondly, well, with that, I think a lot of value has been and can be found in those fleeting encounters. But secondly, um, uh, the fact that animals often run away from us and do not want to be seen, do not want to interact with us, only interact with us fleetingly, is their direct expression of how they would like their relations with humans to go. And if we are actually respecting animal rights, which Josh claims, then we have to respect their right to not want to engage with us, including on a mass scale. So, an alternative perspective is provided by Eva Meyer in her recent, very short book called Multi-Species Assemblies. And she says that learning about animals' opinions, preferences, and perspectives can be done by giving them options concerning the extent of interactions with humans. So this is a viewpoint that I think is much more amenable to respecting the animal's point of view and their agency and their voice. That if they don't want to interact, that's perfectly fine. And that is not only to be tolerated, but supported. Now, Josh also says that we need to have a place for certain animals, those with rights. Those without rights, who cares? They don't matter. But animal, now that's not exactly fair, but that's essentially what he's saying. Animals without rights don't need a place. Now, what he specifically says that animal work does provide a home. So if they're workers, they can have a home. But more importantly, it provides a place for them. So more in terms of social relations and protections. Now, I see two issues with this. One is that there are strings attached to this, that as workers, they then gain a place, a standing, and protections. And second is this is the language of paternalism. Right? We can protect animals if they give us something. We are doing this for their own good. And Josh explicitly admits that paternalism can be applied and that this actually can be a good thing. I think the use of paternalism, explicitly or implicitly, has been exceedingly problematic in situations of oppression and concerning social justice for a very long time. But it is not a problem here, apparently. Now, he also says that with the loss of family farm, or with the loss of the family farm, comes the loss of animals in the countryside. Now, this brings to mind, I think, an obvious question, and one reviewer of Josh's book asked this as well. But where are the wild animals? Why, if there are no farmed animals, are there no animals at all? That is not addressed, and I do not understand this. It seems to me that in finding a place for animals as workers, Josh eliminates a place for all other animals, which seems antithetical to respecting their rights. So, in a bit of a theoretical conclusion, I do think Josh's views can be seductive, often if they are viewed literally or on their own in isolated instances as isolated sentences. If we think about a wider context, ecologically, social justice, if we really begin to think for ourselves and not just read what is written, I think a lot of what people who argue for IVM falls apart, and it falls apart very hard. And so one of the problems that I came to realize through Josh's book is what I think he's doing is trying to take the animal standpoint, but through a human lens. He isn't really taking the animal's viewpoint on their own terms. And that's what leads to the problem. That's why this whole setup is anthropocentric and what causes this conflict of interest. Now, I realize there are problems in viewing animals through their own eyes, but there certainly are ways to. And taking their fleeting encounters with us as an expression of their voice is one example. So another alternative approach is by Lynch et al., green criminologists, who also have a conception of animal rights. And they say that when they refer to animal rights, they mean that non-human animals have a right to exist in conditions freed from the constraints humans apply to ecosystems. So Josh's book is full of constraints, various rights, various modes of confinement, humans making decisions. Whereas the freedom from human constraints is much more amenable to respecting animals, to animal liberation. Now, I have also thought just this morning about why this is so problematic. And I combine two ideas of Eduardo Bonilla Silva and Richard Giles. And Richard Giles, by the way, if anyone's interested in the topic of IVM, he is someone to read the work of. He has a few things out and more forthcoming, but he is brilliant on this topic. And he, in a recent paper, kind of critiques this idea of war and the phrase "the war against animals" by Dinesh Wadawel, and says that what IVM does is so insidious that it's even easily worse than war, that we need completely new terminology for what it does because it seems so good, so tempting, but it's actually so bad. and so oppressive to non-human animals. And so thinking about this terminology, which Richard does not forward, he does not forward concrete alternate terminology, but says we need it. Thinking about Bonilla Silva's racism without racist or colorblind racism, uh, very simply what that is Bonilla Silva positioned this as people who essentially pretend that race is not an issue and therefore that they are not racist. But of course, ignoring race just perpetuates racism. And so I think that, like what Josh lays out in his book, and what a lot of others like him, Bruce Friedrich, Leah Garces, Rachel Robeson Green, lots of people, is they are essentially creating oppression without being oppressors, or thinking themselves as not oppressing animals, but they actually are. And so that is a phrase that I feel like maybe gets the point across better than war. But Richard may disagree, and that's okay. Now, I also think with Sarah Sharma here and her techno-feminist politics of refusal, to me, there's two main points of her techno-feminism. One is that it would reject certain technologies out of hand. AI is an example she uses. IVM, I think, would be another one, but she doesn't mention that. Um, Secondly, is the technofeminism. Sharma says that feminists should or would reject situations that create the conditions where techno fixes are seemingly needed. So IVM would be an example of a techno fix. So I kind of use this idea of techno-feminist politics of refusal to name what I call a non-human, non-politics refusal of IVM. The non-human part is obvious. I call it non-political because animals do not engage with our political systems directly. The concept of electing people, of democracy, is not something that even registers to them this at all. They're totally disengaged from that. And so this is a non-political action, but it is definitely, the animals definitely refuse IVM. And in fact, they always and already do. It's not a question of if they would, they do. So all of this together, I think, reveals that IVM is fundamentally a conflict of interest between humans and non-human animals. In every situation, humans create this and humans want it. The animals just deal with it. So I'll end there. Thank you.